Welcome to On the Ballot with Ballotpedia, where we connect people to politics by providing neutral, nonpartisan, and reliable information on our government, how it works, and where it's headed. I'm Frank Festa, the producer of the show. Thanks for being with us. I'm chiming in today to introduce our new host, Norm Leahy. Norm is joining us from the editorial department here at Ballotpedia, and we are really excited to have him taking over the reins. You're going to be hearing from him a lot. So without further ado, Norm, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I am Norm Leahy, a senior editor here at Ballotpedia, the new host of On the Ballot. And today we're going to talk about a subject near and dear to my heart, which is Virginia politics. And before you tune away, yes, Virginia politics matters to everyone everywhere, and we're going to discuss why that is. And joining me to help make all those connections is one of the Commonwealth's up and coming, and I think best reporters covering this stuff day to day. He lives it, he breathes it. Brandon Jarvis, Virginia Scope. You're the editor, writer,
Yeah,
accountant?
one-man show. Yeah, it's all
Exactly.
me.
But the most important thing is you're independent in what you do too, and that's why we're glad to have you on here. As some people may know, 2 states have statewide elections this year: New Jersey, which we'll get to later in a different show, but Virginia, which seems to have an election every year. In fact, does have election here every year. It's either a boon for those of us who cover politics, or we did something wrong and we're being punished. But whatever side you come down on, give us a overview of what's going on right now, because early voting has started. People are actually casting ballots in these elections. The primaries are next month. Give us the 30,000-foot view of the race so far.
So we have 3 statewide elections: governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general. Then we have all 100 House of Delegates seats up for election. Currently, there's only 2 primary races taking place. That's for lieutenant governor and attorney general on the Democratic side. You have Jay Jones and Shannon Taylor seeking the Democratic nomination for attorney general. Then you have 6 candidates seeking the lieutenant governor nomination. You have 4 more serious candidates, to be blunt. You have State Senator Aaron Rouse, State Senator Ghazala Hashmi, former Richmond Mayor LeVar Stoney, and Prince William School Board Chair Barbara Lateef. Then you also have former federal prosecutor Victor Salgado and a local activist, Aaron Bastoni, seeking the LG nomination. So it's the 3 statewide races. The 2 gubernatorial candidate nominees are set. That's Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears on the Republican side and former Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger on the Democratic side.
Right. And they've already started raising and spending lots of money, haven't they?
Yes. Abigail has raised well north of $10 million. Winsome, she launched later, and then she was also hamstrung because when she's presiding over the Senate during the legislative session, which took place in January and February, she can't raise money. It's against the law. So she's behind, but she's catching up. She had one of the biggest quarters ever for a Republican nominee in raising money. Glenn Youngkin brought in more money during that same time period in 2021, but more than half of it was money he gave to himself. So Sears actually raised the most of any Republican nominee during that time frame in history. So she's got some momentum.
And there are some, there are all 100 members or 100 offices in the House of Delegates.
Yes.
The General Assembly's lower chamber that are up as well. And currently it's a 51-49 split favoring the Democrats.
Yes. So Democrats have a 2-seat majority in both chambers, and the Senate doesn't do re-elections until 2 years from now. So that's set. So Republicans are hoping to try and flip that seat or flip at least 1 seat this year to kind of put a wall up if Abigail Spanberger ends up winning and keeping the Democrats from having a trifecta. But with the way national trends go, as we'll probably talk about more, and Virginia always votes the year after a presidential election, they historically always vote against the party in the White House. So it doesn't look likely that Republicans will be able to flip the House, but who knows?
Right, because of the way that we do redistricting now.
Yeah. So redistricting happened, and it made it more fair in a sense. And Democrats kind of have the advantage more in the House than they used to. I mean, Republicans held the House of Delegates for something like 20 years up until Donald Trump won in 2016. And then Democrats flipped 15 seats in 2017 and then 5 more in 2019 to have a 55-45 majority. in the House of Delegates. They also flipped 2 seats in the Senate in 2019, and so they had a trifecta. They passed for 2 years, passed a ton of progressive legislation with Ralph Northam as the governor still, and Democrats are looking to do that again, and Republicans are looking to keep that from happening.
Right. And it's the redistricting. It was supposed to make things more balanced between the parties.
Yeah, so it was actually a very complicated issue in Virginia. So
Right.
they passed they passed a constitutional amendment to allow for a commission. I don't remember the specific numbers, but it was like 10 legislators and 10 citizen people who come together and form a commission to draw the lines. And there was so much chaos, they couldn't come to agreement that it eventually went to the courts, who then commissioned a map drawer to draw the lines. And at the end of the day, it looks like the lines came out more fair for all parties involved. But yeah, it was chaos dealing with that commission in 2021, and we ended up not doing 21 elections under new lines. They stayed under the old lines from the last decade. So I was actually thinking about this the other day. We're coming up on another census here already in what 5 years, and I don't know how that's going to go down, or if there's going to be a new movement for another commission or something. But that was a stressful time in Virginia politics. A lot of infighting on the Democratic side because Democrats had the majority in both chambers and the ability to draw the lines however they wanted, but it was Democratic legislation that created this commission and kind of took that power away. But we'll see if those negative feelings towards each other come back up in a few years.
You mean people have long memories here and might bring it up later? I'm shocked to hear
Yeah.
somebody say that. But it's but let's get to the brass tacks of these. They're raising the at the top of the ticket. Abigail Spanberger and Winsome Sears. They're going to raise a lot of money, and down the ticket, traditionally those races their atmospherics depend upon what happens at the top of the ticket. So what are the issues that right out of the? I know it's early and that we're still getting things have to gel first.
Yeah.
But what are the issues that seem to be they're testing right now?
So, education, right to work, and probably dominant overall for the Democrats is Donald Trump and these federal workforce cuts and Elon Musk. So, Spanberger's really focusing a lot on pushing back on Trump and the workforce cuts and the impact it has on our economy. Sears, on the other hand, is focused a lot more on right to work. And so Abigail just came out last week in a TV interview and said, "I'm not going to sign a full repeal of Virginia's right to work law, which prohibits it prohibits a union from requiring you to join the union to be employed at a business or a company." Abigail said she wants some changes made and some reforms made. And Winsome Sears says, well, it's a pretty basic law. Any reforms or anything will basically gut it. Winsome's been writing op eds since January about her support for right to work. She supported a constitutional amendment to enshrine right to work in our Constitution. Um, Spanberger lucked out not having a Democratic primary. So that's where this issue really comes up. It bothered Ralph Northam in 2017 and then Terry McAuliffe in 2021 when they had to basically support repealing right to work during the primary and then backtrack on it during the general election because it's kind of like an issue that even Democrats who are, business owners and big money Democrats, they don't support repealing right to work. Um, and so Spanberger really lucked out. She didn't have to come out at all, and she doesn't have to flip flop on it. She can say, I don't support repealing it and not worry about a primary challenge or anything. And so far, the backlash against her hasn't been bad at all. I mean, a few labor people have said something, but the AFL-CIO didn't come out with a statement at all. They haven't endorsed Spanberger, but at this point, is the labor union going to vote for the nominee who's saying she wants to enshrine right to work in the Constitution, or the nominee that's saying I want to reform it, but just not outright repeal it? So, right to work's been big. Republicans in Virginia have been running on education issues and parental rights in the education system since, I mean, well before Glenn Youngkin, and Democrats have been running on fully funding public education. When someone had a big push for school essentially school vouchers. They were opportunity scholarships that they said wouldn't take money from uh, public schools and give it to private schools. It would give $5,000 checks to low income families and let them use it on anything. They could use it on private schools, but they could also use it for just tutoring at private schools or transportation to private schools for extra help. They didn't have to use it on going to private school and leaving public school, but that failed to get out of the Democratic General Assembly. And then Abigail, she's really just pushing for fully funding public schools. She's not going in the weeds yet. And honestly, Abigail's not going in the weeds on many issues. She's kind of staying like high up, talking about Trump issues and just pushing back against Trump.
So, is it your sense that Spanberger's strategy is to stay there, or is she going to, or are Republicans going to try to bring her down into the issues that are closer to what they think are closer to where the voters are?
I think that she's gonna have to come down to the issues either way. I think Republicans will try to bring her down, but I also think Democrats will try to bring her. She has received some criticism online and on Twitter, which I know Twitter isn't real life, but at the end of the day, a lot of the activists are there, and she's kind of been in primary mode for the last year and a half. She launched in 2023, and at a certain point, she is gonna have to take some more concrete stances on these issues, which we saw her do last week coming out of the gate. Well, not out of the gate, but coming out outright against right to work repeal. And so I think she's going to have to get on these issues. She's kind of just waiting, in my opinion, to see where the public kind of falls and see how strong she should go for some issues. Because I mean, we still have what, like 6 months, a little less than 6 months until election day,
Yeah.
and she's been running unopposed since 2023. So she hasn't been forced to take an issue. There's been no primary candidate. So I think it's smart probably for her to wait and, take concrete stances, but at a certain point, she's gonna have to.
But speaking of the primaries, you mentioned that there are some on the Democratic side for the lieutenant governor and for attorney general.
Yeah.
Republicans don't have any primaries, and they don't have a party convention either. But that doesn't mean that all is sweetness and light on the Republican side, does it?
No, it doesn't. So, they were going to have the lieutenant governor primary. It was gonna be Pat Harity against John Reed for the lieutenant governor nomination, and Pat Harity had some heart issues and ended up having open heart surgery, and just after a few weeks of staying in the race, said, "I can't give it my all." I mean, a statewide campaign is a lot. I've witnessed someone have open heart surgery. It takes months to get back to normal. And so he dropped out, which made John Reed, a conservative talk show radio host, the nominee. John Reed is also an openly gay man, the first openly gay nominee for a statewide race in Virginia's history. And for the first few days of him being named the nominee, all was great. Governor Youngkin, Lieutenant Governor Sears, Jason Miyares, they all came out endorsing the ticket. And then on a like 3 or 4 days after that, news broke that the governor called John Reed and asked him to withdraw because a Tumblr account that shared the same Instagram name as John Reed's private account showed repost of naked men. John Reed has denied it, and the Tumblr account was deleted 15 minutes after the first story broke from the Richmonder, and it tailspinned into a wild 2 weeks in Virginia politics. Reed sent a cease and desist letter to Governor Youngkin's political team saying, "Save all your communications with the press." Then Youngkin's top political advisor, Matt Moran, released a signed affidavit outlining all of the stuff that Reed was accusing of. Reed had accused him of extortion. There's an audio recording that eventually came out, secretly recorded, showing or laying out a conversation between Moran and Reed's partner and Reed's campaign manager, where Moran's basically saying, "We'll help you get rid of all this opposition research and everything out there when you drop out of the race." Reed took that as extortion. Listening to the audio, it doesn't seem like, "Oh, we're going to keep pushing this unless you drop out." It's like, "Yeah, if you drop out, we'll help you make sure that you're not going to get like railroaded by all this stuff continuously." And it's all complicated. It's all up in the air. No one knows if it's John Reed's Tumblr account still. No one knows if Youngkin's team really is trying to just kick him out of the race. And it was made even more complicated. I found through a FOIA that Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears, her constitutional duty is to sign legislation that advances out of the state Senate, if she agrees with it or not. And typically, the Speaker of the House, he does the same thing. They just sign the legislation and keep it moving. I mean, they have hundreds of pieces of legislation to sign. On a bill last year that prohibited discrimination in the issuances of marriage licenses for anyone who, based on their sex, race, or gender, Sears wrote that she's morally opposed to that legislation. So that adds in a complication of many people think Sears does not want to run on the ticket with a gay man, an openly gay man. So it's complicated. Sears has come out and said one statement about it, saying it's his race to run. He's the nominee. Youngkin's basically said the same thing and that he'll support the whole entire ticket. I finally got comment from Attorney General Jason Miyares last week where he said, sure, I'll campaign with John Reed. I announced my support for the ticket, and I'm going to campaign with them. Youngkin has stopped short of blatantly saying, yes, he'll be on the campaign trail with Reed, but he indicated he would by saying he'll support the whole ticket. It's really up to Sears right now to kind of bring that unity back to the ticket. And as a whole, the Republican Party across Virginia seems to be backing Reed, sticking with him, not liking the attacks against him. And we'll see what this does to Youngkin's legacy. Republicans are already in an uphill battle to win this race anyways, and this didn't help. So it's been a tailspin and things have kind of calmed down now, but there hasn't really been a public unity moment at all.
which are traditional,
Yeah.
especially when the ticket is all but decided. They all appear together. Their names are all on the same yard signs. So
Yeah.
that hasn't happened yet.
No, they had one scheduled. So the news broke on a Friday, and they had an event scheduled in Henrico County for the next Wednesday. And it was a unity event. It was literally, like, I'm not making up, it was called a unity event, bringing everyone together. And it went from Sears, Miyares, Youngkin, and Reed appearing together to just Reed. And it turned out to be a packed house, a ton of energy. It didn't look good for Youngkin, and it looked great for Reed. The Republican Party seems to not care about Reed's lifestyle. Some of them say they don't agree with it, but they love his conservative principles. Reed is a very conservative man, and if you listen to his talk show at all, he still rails against the 2020 Black Lives Matter protest, and he is a very conservative man who just happens to be openly gay.
Right. So you had something that somebody may be trying to run a write-in campaign
Yeah.
against Reed?
So John Curran, he was the other primary candidate, but he failed to secure the 10,000 signatures to get on the primary ballot. And I think he was like halfway there, somewhere around 5 or 6,000. And he's alleging that his campaign manager did not turn in enough signatures because she had not been paid. I had obtained a legal communication from her to Curran back in March where he was seeking something like or $17,000 in unpaid fees from Curran. Curran told me that he paid her, and that is available on VPAP, which shows Virginia Public Access Project shows all of the payments made to and from candidates and donors. It's a really great resource in Virginia. And he did pay her in January, but he didn't pay her again after that. And there's multiple accusations. John Fredericks, who is a Trumper radio person in Virginia, was running his ads, and I've published a story about that. Curran reached out to Fredericks and had him running ads and then never paid him. And Curran told me he had no contract, but Fredericks sent me a screenshot of their communication showing that he would pay. So Curran's dealing with that. It's going to be a write-in campaign. Not very promising. If he can't even get the 10,000 signatures to get on the primary ballot, I can't imagine he's going to do anything to really sway this race any more than it's already being swayed.
And then, so that'll be there. There's a lot of moving parts on the
Ugh.
Republican side, even though it looks ostensibly like it's set.
Yeah, they had 3 days of unity, and now it's just pure chaos.
Okay. But that doesn't mean that the Democrats actually have, you said half a dozen candidates running for lieutenant governor
Yeah.
and the 2 for attorney general. And
Yeah.
and to be clear for everybody out listening, all of these races are run separately. There is no
Mhm.
official ticket. These are all
Yeah.
independent offices. So Virginia literally can have a governor of one party, a lieutenant governor of another, and an attorney general potentially of a third.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, Tim Kaine had a Republican attorney general, didn't he?
Right.
Wasn't Bill Bowling
Bill
the
Bowling.
or lieutenant governor, I'm sorry. So it was
Right.
a Democratic governor and a Republican lieutenant governor.
Right, and the same thing happened with Mark Warner during
Hmm.
his term, and Jim Gilmore before that.
Yeah.
So it's not unprecedented because once upon a time, split ticket thing, it was a very Virginia thing to do.
Yeah.
But looking at that Democratic side, how do you handicap the race for the lieutenant governor nomination? Because there's a lot of serious contenders on that side.
And that makes it even more difficult to predict. I think it could be realistically, I think it could be either LeVar Stoney, Aaron Rouse, or Ghazala Hashmi that comes out with the victory. Um, Bobber Lateef, the Prince William School Board chair, he definitely has a chance as well. He's raised enough money. Hashmi has gone on TV. She went on TV earlier this week. Stoney starts on TV today with 4 ads, and he's got former Governor Terry McAuliffe in 2 of his ads.
Huh.
So it's really hard to predict. We don't really have any solid independent polling. Um, I mean, Aaron Rouse has kind of raised the most money. I think Stoney and Rouse are basically the same on money. So it's really it's kind of wide open. It's hard to
Okay.
predict.
Okay. And at the top, I had mentioned before we went on, why should people who don't live in Virginia care about what happens here?
Because it's a very good reflection of what the public is thinking of the Donald Trump administration. Going back to 1973, only twice has Virginia elected a governor who's in the same party as the party in the White House. One of those times was Terry McAuliffe in 2013. There was a third candidate that took votes away from Ken Cuccinelli, who was the Republican candidate. And also, Ken Cuccinelli was very far right for Virginia standards. I mean, as Attorney General, he argued that same-sex marriages should remain illegal. And in 2013, I know it was, what, 12 years ago, but that still wasn't very accepted in Virginia. Virginia is a purple state. It tends to lean more Democratic in federal issues, but on state issues, it comes right back to the middle. And it's just a big reflection of what the public is thinking of Donald Trump, a reaction to his policies and his movements. And it's one of only 2 states with statewide elections where you can really get a full gauge of what the public is thinking of what is happening in DC.
And as the race has evolved so far, this will be my final question to you, Brandon, because I know you've got a lot to do today. What's been the one thing that surprised you most about the race so far?
Well, outside of the Republican chaos, I think Spanberger not taking huge, or I won't say huge, but Spanberger not really taking a, a strong stance on many issues has kind of surprised me. But she's also always running races where she can, she's in tight districts. When she won in 2018, that district had been held by a Republican for 40 years. It helped that Donald Trump was elected 2 years before. Virginia flipped 3 congressional seats that year. But Spanberger is a Democrat in a state where Democrats have the advantage this year. They have the wind at their back. If I had to predict right now, I think it's a D plus 10 race for governor. I mean, that's what Northam won by in 2017. And with all of the chaos at the top of the ticket, and with Sears being quite a bit farther to the right than Governor Northam or Governor Youngkin, I think that Spanberger really has the momentum to go out here and just be a Democrat, say I'm a Democrat, and still win. Another thing that's kind of really surprised me is Sears has written notes on legislation that she signed. I mentioned that one earlier where she wrote she was morally opposed to prohibiting discrimination against same sex marriage. She's written notes on other things too. She wrote a note last year being opposed to the Right to Contraception Act, allowing women to receive contraception. And she knew she was running for governor last year. In Virginia, these are not popular issues. So I don't know if it's a misstep or if she was worried about a possible primary race against Attorney General Jason Miyares. But these issues are staying relevant. Democrats are holding press conferences nearly every single day since these FOIAs came out. And I don't see where the winning strategy is on that. So quite a few things are surprising me. I'm surprised Spanberger is not taking strong stances, but I'm also surprised Republicans are just kind of up and down the statewide ballot, messing everything up. Attorney General Jason Muir seems to be the only one kind of just staying out of the negative limelight and pushing forward and talking about what he's done and what he wants to do. So it both surprised me because Republicans ran a perfect statewide campaign in 2021. Sears was the only one that had any little hiccups, and that was when she went on Newsmax and said, I would support the 6-week abortion ban that Texas just implemented. And after that, she basically was silent. Youngkin's team kind of was like, no more interviews. Let us just take the lead here. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's really hard to imagine Republicans winning these statewide seats and taking the House. Like I said, it was an uphill battle already. And then with this chaos and no unity happening, it's hard to imagine that moving forward.
But we've got a long way to go before the
Yeah.
first votes are counted, and anything, as you know, Brandon, can happen. And
Oh,
we
yeah.
will have you back to discuss this once campaign season officially gets underway in the fall. Brandon Jarvis, writer, correspondent, chief cook and bottle washer at the Virginia Stove. Thank you for joining us on The Ballot. I'm Norm Leahy. Thank you for joining us today. You can listen to this podcast again wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, you name it. But we'll be back next week. Until then, I'll see you on the pages of Ballotpedia.